Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Right Path podcast. Folks, this is the place where being an author, an actual author, still matters. This is the place that is for authors. It is about authors. It's done by an author. And this is also the place where we share our journeys, we explore our creativity, and most importantly, we examine the why behind it all, because that's really what matters, isn't it? All right, our guest today, absolutely fantastic lady. I'm already excited to hear about all the projects she has going on. Let me just kind of list them here because I want to make sure I got them all. But she has published a bunch of stuff. She's got three books that were out already before we even started this. Camera Ready, Princess Smile, For Position Only. These are dramedies that she put out about her time in LA. She has a book coming out. I hope I'm allowed to talk about this, but Deadly Sins, can we mention that? I hope so.
We can mention Deadly Sins, of
Okay.
course.
I'm getting the okay during the intro, which is a collection of short stories, So she's kind of following the Stephen King path here, which is really, really cool. She also has her mystery thriller novel out there, Summer's Blood, which just by the title, I mean, makes me want to read it right now. That's been out for a minute, but now she also, this week, came out with book two of her series, Slipper Girl. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. They are books one and two of the trilogy, soon to be trilogy, The Neon Diaries. Folks, all of that and more. Please welcome to the stage Adele Royce. Adele, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today.
I appreciate you coming on, and I really should have checked that with you about the deadly sins thing in the pre-interview. But I mean, the die was cast. I was already drowning. If you said no, I was like, "Whoops! All right, maybe we'll just start over."
All good.
Appreciate that. But my goodness, you have done so much. We could start about a million different places. Let me kind of throw it to you. Tell everybody a little bit about who is Adele Royce. Where are you from? Where did this all come from?
Well, Adele Royce, yes, I am someone who's been writing for a long time since I was a child, really. I was very interested in it. And my journey really began there with wanting to read a lot, reading classics and reading fiction, poetry, you name it. When I got to college, so I grew up in LA, as you had mentioned, and I went to college at Arizona State, and I majored in English. So that was kind of the way I really got into reading great literature and writing about, because when you're an English major, you're just reading everything and writing about these great literary works. So I was always very interested in that. Uh, when I graduated, I went, my first job was in Nevada working for a casino. And I managed, because of my writing skills, I managed to get a job in publicity. And okay, so I told you I majored in English. And so PR was something I didn't know, but I kind of learned it right away. I knew how to write, I learned how to write in that journalistic style. So that was pretty much, what we used to put out press releases and all sorts of things. So that started my career in marketing. And I just ended up working for some big companies in Las Vegas, was on the Las Vegas Strip for a lot of my work experience. And from PR, I kind of moved into advertising and just in general corporate marketing. And that was really a lot of writing. Um, but it wasn't, I hadn't really delved into the creative writing yet. Um, so that's kind of like how I got started. Um, and probably just really started writing fun stuff on the side because I needed a creative outlet, because the job that I was in was extremely, you know, busy and hectic. And so I didn't really have a whole lot of time off, and I wanted to explore some just writing. And that's how I started writing the books. I just started writing. I was writing about myself. I was writing stories that were sort of funny. We can talk about what those were. They never made it into being published because people probably would have tried to sue me.
Oh boy.
But because I was writing about real stuff that was happening in my life, and I was like, okay, but what happened in that process was friends of mine would read some of the writing and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so funny. This is so good. Like, why aren't you publishing this? Why aren't you writing?" And I think that's what kind of pushed me in the direction, if that
Wow.
makes any sense.
Yeah, completely. It's funny because as I was reading your bio and reading through your information and looking at your website and stuff, you brought this up just now about how you're writing as an outlet and you're writing about real people. I'm sitting here kind of in my mind as I'm doing this research, going, this almost sounds like the makings of a hit TV series or something, where like, hey, if you mess with this woman, she's going to go ahead and write this tell-all novel about you, and then the cops have to wait for like the next novel to come out to crack the case or something. And I'm like, yeah, I wonder how many of these characters are like real people that she actually met. Does that ever take place, or is that something that we need to keep on the down low?
No, you know what? I actually don't write about anybody I know in my fiction because, like I said, the way I got started writing, I was just writing, I'd call it almost like a funny journal of like a cathartic way to say, whether it was somebody I dated who was didn't work out, or and I would see the absurdity in these situations. And so my writing was tended to be very cutting. And but when I started to write fiction, I literally did not I do not I don't even use composites of people I know. So every single person in these series is someone I made up. And that transition from just writing these little things into actual fiction came much later. Like if I was writing those stories back in like the early 2000s or like 2005 or whatever, I didn't really start getting serious about these books and writing an actual manuscript until probably about 10, 12 years ago. And
Wow.
then I became like, okay, I, now really want to focus on fiction because it's really fun to make up people. It's really fun to make them up and to put them in situations that are torturous. and and then to, take them on the journey that they're going to go on through these novels and hopefully they're going to be okay. I always try to make them okay. I do. I like Hollywood endings. But no, you won't see me in my dreams for a TV series. All of us want that. I don't think there's one author out there who's writing fiction that does not want their work to make it to the screen in some sense,
Right.
small or large. But yeah. But yeah, these are totally fictional novels, and that to me is the absolute most fun way to express creativity.
Nice, nice. Now, with all this writing that you did that kind of warmed you up and kind of got you into, the flow of, expressing yourself in the written word and creating characters and stuff. Was there something in there or in your life that led you towards the, dramedy sort of romance that you started with the first three books? Or was that just where you happened to land?
That's a great question. I was a big fan of Sex in the City. I was a big fan of like novels that were sort of categorized in the chick lit category where, you know, um, relationships, that dynamic was on display. So when I wrote those first three books, the first book I wrote actually was Princess Smile. I published it last in that series because I think it needed the most work. But I wrote that book, and so it ended up being the prequel to Camera Ready and Four Position Only. But yeah, the relationships were really that was a fun topic for me to write about. It seemed like a natural topic for me. I used my background in advertising and marketing to create this fictitious ad agency that they all worked at. I set it in LA because that's where I grew up, and I think the time I was living in Florida and I wanted so badly to go home to California that I was like writing these books and making trips out to LA because it was an excuse to go back and feel my home city, and have these books be set there. So yeah, I think the relationship stuff was just kind of easy for me to write, and I didn't, you know, of course, it took me a lot of work to learn how to write a novel. That was not an overnight thing. I wrote like a horrible Princess Smile was something else. It was a horrible manuscript, and I had to work on it for years to figure out how to create the whole, just how to figure out how the arc of the characters, what's the story, the pacing. And that took quite a bit of hard work. And so that said, I had to learn how to do this. And once I got it, it just was so natural to me to spill these stories out and have them really, really flow and have fun with it. And so yeah, those first three books, I'd call those really, really fun, light fare. The characters get into some pretty scary stuff, you know, and they're all, you know, every one of my characters is they're not like great people. I want them to all be relatable, but they're all flawed and they're all making all kinds of mistakes. And that's the fun of when the fiction fun comes in, where you're like, okay, how are they going to get out of this scrape? And that was always in the story writing itself. It would kind of like magically flow, and I'd get the idea of, okay, here's how I'm gonna finish this book. I never outlined in those first three books. I just was sort of what they call a pantser, in that I was writing. I always knew the characters. I knew that because, there was one conflict, one big relationship that was, the conflict uh, in those first three books. So I knew how things were going to play out. And then when I wrote For Position Only, that would have actually was book three. And I love that book, by the way. That's like one of my favorites of all mine. But it was a real like, okay, shut the door now. I can't do anything else to these people. They have been through war with each other, with their relationship. And so that kind of that was the end of that story, so to speak. So when I finished those three books and I published them all, I was like, okay, where am I going to go with this story? And that's where I came up with the idea for Summer's Blood, and moving it into mystery thriller, which is much darker and much scarier than
Yeah.
anything that I'd done before that.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure people ask you that all the time. How do you go from this, sort of lighter, a little happier, right, over to this really dark, sort of thing? Is there an event that happened, or is there a sort of a causation behind that? Or did you just say, hey, I want to do something different?
I actually wanted to do something different, but I did not think, oh, I'm going to write a mystery thriller. I didn't, you know, this all of these books are connected by the characters. So the same characters that you see, a couple of them actually, because I move them around and I move new ones in, of course, but they're all connected, and all five of the books and eventually six will be connected to the same family, the same universe of characters. And what the reason I've done that is that, one, I didn't want to say goodbye to, to them. I didn't want to totally say, okay, I don't want to follow these people's lives anymore. I'm interested in what's going to happen to them. I have a vested interest in these characters. So what can I do in a new book? And that's where the sort of what if moment comes about, where you're like thinking, you know, where could this story go? What path could I take that would be really fascinating, but not necessarily involving two people in their relationship? And that's how I came up with Summer's Blood, because there was an element of a character in all three of the first books. His name is Craig Keller, and uh, he had to basically redeem himself in those three books. He was a terrible person when I started it. One of those characters you love to hate. And he ended up being my protagonist. And I never written from a male point of view. So that actually in itself was very challenging at first. But once I
Wow.
caught his voice and once I became very involved in that character, the idea for Summer's Blood came about. And I kind of dug into this past that started in Princess Smile, where his Craig's brother died when he was 17 years old, when Craig was 17, and he never knew really what happened. And so it was always this thing that like reason for why he was kind of a bad person, and why he treated people poorly and why he got himself into all this trouble. And then I thought, well, what if that could sort of be resolved? What if I dug into what really happened in this yacht accident that happened, 30 years prior? Like, what if I went into that and he could find out what happened, and what is that gonna uncover? And I that's when I decided I was gonna set it in Las Vegas. Um, and a lot of really crazy revelations came out in Summer's Blood, but that's what moved it into mystery thriller. I did not even intend for that. I literally was like writing the book, outlining, of course, because then I realized, okay, if I'm writing this style of book, I'm really going to have to outline and figure out, you know, what's going to happen because the details are so important. The details are so important in a mystery thriller. And that so back to try to very circular route to get back to your question, but I did not say, oh, I'm going to write a mystery thriller. It just that that's what the story was. And then I, of course, had to get myself up to speed to figure out how I was going to write that way because it really is very different from what I started with.
Okay, I love this on so many levels, and I'm not sure if everybody listening is going to fully appreciate what you're telling them right now. Um, Anybody can say, "Hey, I'm tired of writing this. I want to try and write this." You you built your characters to the point where they are absolutely real people. You are in charge of their lives. You are concerned about them all. You are following these characters into a new arc of their own lives as the writer and as a spectator, and their lives took this turn into this mystery thriller part of their lives. That is so insanely difficult to achieve in a real way, like you have done. That is amazing what you've done. I
Thank
gotta
you.
I gotta dig into your characters for a minute. How do you begin? How did you begin putting these characters together?
You mean like starting with book one, like Princess Smile? How did
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the first character you created, where'd that come from? How'd you start putting them together? What were the ingredients you used to build these people?
It's so funny. The book that became Princess Smile, it started in a total. I told you I started with like a kernel, and then, as I mentioned, it was not it was not at all ready for prime time. I mean, that was a book that just I had to it morphed and morphed and morphed. The main character was always the same. Her name is Jane Mercer. I picked Jane because my grandmother's name is Jane, and I absolutely loved her. And she was such a strong person in real life. And I thought, let me write the character of Jane. Jane really didn't start out a strong character. I had her in the original book. She worked in advertising. She worked for an agency in LA. So like all that very familiar to me that I can write, what that world is. She was like really young and insecure and, kind of clawing her way up the corporate ladder and all kinds of drama. But what was funny is I wrote her with this character who was really a villain, but he was her boyfriend, and I was like writing this character, and then what happened was in the middle of that book, I came up with this character of Craig Keller, who is this, you know, like this dashing ad guy who is, has the big agency in LA, and what was funny is every time Jane and Craig were in the same room, there was this incredible, like, fireworks style chemistry where I was like, okay, this guy was going to be kind of a fringe character at first. Like, I was just moving him in to have some kind of an obstacle in her trying to get a job, working for him and trying to get ahead. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I really love these two together. Even though there was a lot of tension and he was a terrible guy, as I said. It took me 3 books to redeem him. But that was where that character was born. And he was such a dynamic character to me and so interesting, and so was she, that I I just went, just like what you said, following them and seeing where they go. Those first three books, there was a lot of that. And most authors and writers will tell you that if they're writing fiction, you can be writing a character, and you can be writing a scene, and maybe the scene is something that you've already decided how it's going to go, and then it goes somewhere in a different direction, and suddenly you're following, like on the keyboard, like I'm not even there. The author's voice is like, I Adele Royce is taking this story down. And these characters are kind of deciding what they want to do. And I've heard many, many writers say they've had that experience. And it
Mhm.
really is kind of in a creepy way, sort of, because you're like, they're real. They're headed down this path, and now I'm following them, and you're not even thinking about it. And it's going, the dialogue is there, the event is there, something really special is happening in that moment. And then what you end up with at the end of the day is a scene where you're like, okay, I'm keeping this. I didn't, this wasn't where I was gonna go, but now it is. And this story really works. And so that definitely, that happens in every book of mine, where something like, I will take a turn, and then I'm letting these guys do what they want to do. And to your point, they are real. I have readers who care about them, and they'll be like, oh, and they miss them when the book is over. They're like, oh, when's the next one? When's the next one? And that is so cool, because then you're like, okay, well, now we're all in the same boat here. Like, I want to see what happens next. You want to see what happens, so it's very fun to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's very rare. There are people who do that. It's very rare to have your characters change the genre on you. So that's pretty
They
unique.
did.
Yeah,
I guess
that's
I can
pretty unique.
credit them for that.
Yeah, but they obviously did a good job, because the books seem to be fantastic. So kudos to the characters. I definitely want to dive into, Slipper Girl here, because I know it just came out. I do want to ask you though about your process a little
Yeah.
bit, if that's okay. Everybody kind of has their own thing that they do. Some people, oh, I got to do an hour a day. It's going to be from this time to this time. Some people are like, whenever it comes up, I take the notes and then I put it together later. What is your process for writing? How does this come to you? Because you put a ton in your characters. That I get, but the story seems like it is much more organic. That comes up between your characters, the way that you build it. Maybe I'm getting that all wrong, but what's your process for putting it all together?
Well, as I had mentioned, the process changed considerably when I realized that I was writing mystery thriller. And I think Summer's Blood, I probably had quite a few, because my process is really this. I have to start writing. So if I, and this could totally not make it into the final draft or in any way, shape, or form, but for me, I always start with the idea of the story, a character or two characters who I'm going to spotlight that, in the last book were interesting, and where I sort of set up what that next story is going to involve, because there's some things that we don't know, and there's some things that I want to find out. And so when I figure out what the general gist of the story is, and I talk that through, with my husband, we sit there and talk plot, and I'll be like, okay, what do you think of this? And so then I'll take notes. I'll handwrite the notes. I put them into my phone if I'm somewhere and I'm thinking about something, and I just like write it in my phone, and then I put it all together. But I will usually start writing, as I have for the Slipper Girl sequel. Paragraphs, a few pages, and I think of a scene. How could this book start? What's the intrigue that's going to pull a reader in? And again, it might not ever make it into a final draft. It's just a way to get the story started, if that makes sense, is just to get the story to started, get characters talking, get a scene in place, set the stage, bring in the characters who I want, who will be the characters that end up, you know, staying in the story, or some I might get rid of, or I might. But yeah, the process kind of is me coming up with an idea of an overall story, and then writing and outlining. So right now I really need to hammer out an outline for the new book. But yeah, Slipper Girl came about because I was really fascinated by a character that I started in Summer's Blood. Her name is Skylar Van Ness. Van Ness, just as a little tidbit, is my family name. It's my on my dad's side. There was a whole family of Van Ness. He has a Dutch side, so I took the Van Ness name and I used it in Summer's Blood. And then I really liked this character. She was only 17 in Summer's Blood, so I thought, what if I just like fast forward it 10 years later? And she was interesting to me because she was really, really troubled. She was a very troubled teenage girl who had all kinds, and in creating her character for Slipper Girl meant, okay, how does she turn out? And that was what was interesting to me, is like, how is she going to turn out? And then I thought, let's make her this really like serious career woman who's running a casino. Now, granted, her father owns the casino, because I have a lot of nepotism in my books. It's like this the Kellers and the Van, and it's kind of fun for me to do this. But she's running marketing, and me, I worked in marketing for a casino, so I know the business. I could write that again. I'm just throwing in stuff that I know. And of course I know Las Vegas. So yeah, that's kind of how that story, that character, she was born. And I thought, wow, I'm going to spotlight on her because she's going to be really interesting. She's going to have some real trouble and some things that are good. She's going to have to navigate through, and it's going to be an odyssey of stuff. And
Wow.
that and Slipper Girl, I will say, is much darker than Summer's Blood. I mean, there's that element of suspense where she's by herself somewhere and something is going to happen, and it's scary. It's a scarier story than I've ever written.
Hmm. Okay, and Slipper Girl's the one that just came out. So let's make sure we give Slipper Girl its time here. Um, Without
Yes.
giving away the secret sauce, obviously, of the book. Because, hey, if you want to know the story, go buy the book. Come on, people. All right. But, I mean, really, but what can you tell us about, because it is very different from what you've been doing. Um, what can you tell us to kind of entice everybody to go, man, maybe I need to go check this out?
Yes. So basically, the story is set in Las Vegas. And like I said, Skylar Van Ness is one of the main characters. She is running the business in the casino, and her estranged mother shows up. Her mother, who raised her in a very unorthodox way in Amsterdam, has sent her a letter, um, disrupting her life, because there's a lot of secrets that Skylar has that if they come out, they can unravel her life. They can take down her father's business. They can, if these things reached uh, the general public, there was a very serious crime committed. There's a murder that we're witnessing on page one. We don't know who has done it, but that's the prologue. There's a murder, and and then we're following Skylar through this estranged mother showing up and and threatening her and blackmailing her. But I will say this, the book follows this whole game of cat and mouse between her and her mother. And but we don't really know. The way I set the book up is, you're not going to really know who's following her, who's stalking her, who has what information. We're just going to know she's scared, and she's trying to keep this buried. She's trying to keep it down. She's fighting to keep the whatever she can in her power to to keep these secrets from coming to the surface. So yeah, lots of themes: revenge, you know, blackmail, um, family drama, the father-daughter relationship, because Skylar's father is a prominent character. He's actually a co-main character with Skylar, and you know, and a lot of themes about family bonds, family drama, family secrets. I explore that a lot in all my books. But yeah, Slipper Girl, I I actually Slipper Girl is my favorite right now. Maybe it's because she was just born on Monday. But it I feel like it's a really great really fits right into the thriller category in terms of what makes those. So if you're a thriller fan, Slipper Girl is a real it's really falls into that category.
All right. I love it. I mean, that was a great advertisement for it, to be honest, and a great promo. So if people aren't fired up to go read this, I don't know why. You're not listening, folks. Okay. So you got to go check this out for sure. Now this is book two of a trilogy, at least the way you have planned now, of the Neon Diaries, right?
Yes.
So do we have any kind of sneak peek about book three at all? And if not, it's fine.
So this the sneak peek about book three is well, it's going to focus on a character where if I highlight this character, it might have some spoilers from Slipper
Okay.
Girl. But I will say this, it will also be set in Las Vegas. A lot of the same characters in Summer's Blood and Slipper Girl will be it recur in this in the new book, and there will also be an international twist.
Hmm.
Um, not
Okay.
with Amsterdam, but there'll have an international twist to it. That's about all I can say
Love it.
because I
Love
haven't
it.
written it yet.
It is in the early stages of development. I love that
It's
though.
in here.
Right on. Right on. Whenever we sit down to write our books, very often we are picturing somebody. We are writing the books to somebody. We're writing the books for somebody. Do you have somebody like that? Is there someone that you're, or something that you're writing the books to or for?
What a great question. I don't think anyone's asked me that. I write the books for my readers and for myself, I would say, because, again, it's the continuation of the story. And then when you've published so many books in a series and couple series, and I feel as though I'm writing. I want to make sure my readers are happy. I want to make sure they continue to stay with me. And taking a turn on going from what I started with to mystery thriller was a chance that I took that I might alienate some of those dedicated readers who really liked the romance and that type of story. But that's why Summer's Blood felt like more of a transition from where in one thing I do in all my books is I have an element, a romantic element. So you won't be disappointed if there's like if you like a little bit of that. I try to keep the characters to to be very real and to have actual lives beyond just what is occurring in the format of the story. It's like you gotta see what the relationships with are behind closed. Like you want to take the reader there so they can see and feel and understand and relate to a character. But back to your question, I'm definitely writing for myself and my readers. Like I said, I feel like we're all in the same place.
That's great. I thank you for fielding the question. I mean, I don't prep anybody on questions, folks. So she's hearing this for
No,
the
that
first
was a
time
good
going,
one.
wait, what?
A good one.
So I love that. You don't have to answer this one, okay? But I'm curious. Are any of the characters, either based or loosely based on you? Are you in the book?
Not for this one. But let me just clarify that because yes, I was the head of marketing. I've been, I've worked in the casino industry, so yes, are there things about that work um, that that I can bring in? Sure, maybe not like something that actually happened, but my experience dictates, that like I know. I know what would happen in a lot of these situations that are work-based. So definitely that. The one character that I feel like had the most, where I actually put in my own in idiosyncrasies, I guess would be the word, is when I wrote For Position Only, and my character of Craig Keller, I was in his brain, and I actually I write in the beginning of the book, Craig Keller, c'est moi, because weirdly I gave him so many, like he had the, and just to give you a couple of things, he washed his hands all the time, and this was pre-pandemic, all right? The hand sanitizer and the hand washing, I mean, and the weird thing of like germs, that was me. And it was before the pandemic. So I was actually, when I published that book, it was during the pandemic. And I was thinking, oh gosh, I should write in somewhere in here that this book was written before all of this stuff happened. But yeah, and I had him, he has a thing for art. He's a well-off guy, so he likes Chagall paintings, he collects them. I made him the way he dresses, the things that he really loved, some of his habits. That was me. And I thought it was kind of funny because he was not a very good person, and I of course helped him get better. Um, I put him in therapy in that book. That was fun. With a female therapist, that was fun.
Wow.
But yeah, I'd say yes. I definitely put my own self, because you kind of have to imagine what somebody might be going through. I mean, granted, there are things that I've never had to face in my own real life that these people, and that's where the writer has to take over, and your imagination has to, you know, what would what is this person thinking while all this is happening? And that's the sort of magic of creativity, where you can just go, okay. But again, you're putting yourself in there, you're empathizing with this character so that you can understand how they would actually feel if something this big were to happen.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love the answer on so many levels. You mentioned earlier about how different it was writing for a man in a man's voice. And then this, I ask you if you're a part of, if part of you is in the book, and then you go to a male character. So I'm like, wow, okay, interesting. So I guess something I'm wondering is, as you're writing a male character, right, as a female author, who put him in therapy with a female therapist. I mean, you're very conscious of it, obviously, which is cool. Was there anything that was either difficult or surprising as you were writing and as that developed? Writing the character of your male characters as a female author.
Great question, and I haven't really talked about that much. The thing with Craig was, when I wrote his character for Position Only, it took me, I had to catch his voice, and I kept, I'd have my husband keep reading the first few chapters, and like, sounds like a woman. It sounds too, you and I really, and I had written him in the other two books, but I wasn't in his brain. It was dialogue, and it was reaction, and he was perfectly, believable as the woman rogue that he was in those first three books. But when I actually had to go and write, because I wrote those first three books in first person narrative, I wrote Summer's Blood in first person narrative. Slipper Girl is written in third person. I'm not sure why I did that. But when I was writing from his, I this, and I'm in his brain suddenly, then it's like I had to really, really change. I had to catch his voice. I had to get his voice. And once I got it, it was very, very, it flowed very naturally for me to write the book in his voice. But yeah, that was not an easy thing. It took me quite a long stretch of rewriting and rewriting and figuring out how to think like him, and I did. I think it was kind of surprising how how well I did. This guy, but maybe a little strange, but yeah. And then the characters that I have in the Neon Diaries, I have one who's really a man's man, and he's like chain smoking, swearing every other word. I mean, he owns the casino. He's like this brash kind of guy, and he's also very believable. But yeah, I feel like you switch, I switch from Skylar to her father, and it's a very discernible switch because you gotta have the characters sound different. You can't have them thinking in the same way, saying anything that would be where if you took the names off of those characters, that the reader would be like, oh no, I know that's DJ and I know that's Skylar, because I don't even need to know or see who's saying it. That's the trick of getting these characters so that they're different and that they sound, act, talk. They all got to be they need to be unique.
Okay, well, I love that answer. I love all these answers. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. I love that you just took it on like that. But you also gave it so much, you gave so much credence to it and you gave so much importance to it. You went and got a male perspective that you trusted to help you in the metamorphosis into it too. A lot of people are like, hey, I can't write that, so I just don't. And you went out and did
Mhm.
that. It's incredibly impressive. You brought up a point, though, that I don't know, maybe you wanted to glance over it. So, again, you don't have to answer any question you don't want to. But is Slipper Girl the first book that you've done from the third person? I thought that was incredibly interesting.
Yes, it is the first book I've done written in third person. I'd call it limited point of view because, again, when we're focused on Skylar, you're going to be seeing and hearing more of what she's thinking. It's not omniscient where I'm in every single character's brain. It's going to be, but I wrote it in third. All of my short stories that you had mentioned, Deadly Sins, that's not out yet. That comes out in August, or September. But all those short stories were written in third person. So I already knew I could do that because for some authors, that's a real stretch. Like, oh no, I want to write in first person. And incredibly, writing in first person is very difficult. It's one of the more difficult ways to write because you have to have that person in every single scene. So if I'm writing Craig Keller and and something is happening with other characters, he's got to be in the room. So you got to be creative in creating a reason for that person to be in, like, and it's tricky. So third person is a lot, you know, I think especially if you are going to be hopping from head to head. But I kind of stuck with being in one perspective, but I would call it a limited point of view third person. So you're really honed in on one character at a time.
Hmm. And you say there was no particular reason why you do that because I'm wondering it kind of puts you in the same seat as the audience.
I don't even know why. It was almost like I wanted to prove to myself that I could write a whole book in third person, and see how it turned out. The one thing you want to do as a writer is make sure you commit to tense or one narrative and one tense because that's something that a lot of people will do. And then you got to make sure that that's really what you want. Like if I'm going to write from first person, I don't want to write most of the book and then have to go back and put it into third. That's ugly. That's like a day's work. Let me tell you more. No, don't do that. I've tried that before and it's like, whoa, no, 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 no. Start with what you do, commit to what you're going to write it in, I guess, which is what I did. I
Interesting.
stayed with it.
I love it. I mean, plus, I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to challenge yourself and say, hey, I want to do this differently, and here's what I want to do. So, I mean, good for you. That's fantastic.
Thank
Yeah. All
you.
right. Okay. So we've got the books they're all behind you, folks. If you're on the video version of this, you're going to see this awesome like menu of books that are behind Adele right now. Great backdrop. I mean, wonderful advertising for the books. Got to tell you.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions left, but before we get through the last couple, let me just make sure that I don't forget to get some information out for everybody. How do they reach you? How do they find you? Best place to find the books, stuff like that.
One stop shop, just go to my website. It is adelroyce.com and you can if you can check out the characters, I have a whole section on meeting characters. You can go and read about each book, and you can link to buy if you want to. So yeah, adelroyce.com.
Wonderful. All right, great way to go. Do you have a way for them to get in contact with you, the author, or do you just still everybody through the website, like a social
Well,
media thing or anything like that?
the website actually has my email. So you
Oh
can
wow,
follow me on social media if you want to. I'm on all the usual suspects. So if you want to do that, or you can actually get in touch with me through the website and through my contact page. I love to hear from readers. I love to hear from other writers too.
awesome, awesome. All right. Um, as we kind of come to a close here, I do have a final question I always want to ask, but this character development thing, it really and truly kind of just has my interest, and did you set out with an outline of I want to have all these characters, so let's go develop them? Or did you also let that be natural and kind of just say, hey, I have this. Oh, now I have this situation. I'm going to need another character here. Maybe I'll create somebody. Can you tell me a little bit about just kind of how that went?
Yeah, another good one. I that so the characters I'll always start out with the main characters, and I know who they are a lot because a lot of them are coming from another book, or they started in another book, like Skylar, for example. So I knew, you know, and I knew she was going to have uh, an antagonist within the office group, and so I'll have the main characters down, but a lot of times I will, just like what you said, if there is a situation where I will need another, a foil or a hero helper or a hero somebody else, I can create that character, but overall I usually, I have a set of what, the mains, the stars, and then I have the sort of supporting actors, and those usually stay the same. Um, but it can't, that can always change. The story can make that change. I might need somebody to make something happen, or it's just it does depend on the story, but I like to write out the character, and that I brainstorm the characters just by talking about the story. Like, okay, wouldn't this be, because we need a couple of these. I like to have a lot of comic relief. I always have humor in all my books, every single one. Some of them are funnier than others, but I like to have, when things are getting really intense, I like to have a character who is sort of absurd, and there's because that's what lets readers just take a breath and go, oh, thank goodness, he's back or she's back, and he or she are like sort of absurd, kind of ridiculous characters, but they're a part of the whole thing that makes it holds the story together, I guess.
Well, all right. I love it. Last question, because I can sit here and talk to you about this process probably all day long because I'm fascinated and I just think you're doing an amazing job with it.
Oh,
The
thanks.
we have a lot of folks who listen to this that are authors, and a whole lot of folks based on the DMs that we get that are aspiring authors. And so, one of the things they're looking for is some advice. You are a published author, very successful by all counts, from what I can tell. Because oh my gosh, way to go! You keep doing it. It sounds like they keep getting better and better. And what is your best piece of advice for the aspiring author out there in particular, who is not quite where you are yet?
You said it best just now. You said the more you write, the better you get. And I can't stress enough. I have a ton of people, friends, family, people I don't even know who will ask that same question to me. And I always say, you got to just write. You've got to make
Mm.
time to write. So I know we're all busy and we all have day jobs and relationships and family and health and all that stuff. But if you really are passionate about doing it, you got to do it as much as possible, because what you'll find is the more you sit in solitude and find that place where you can just, uh, focus, not no disruptions, just focus, whether it's outside, wherever it is, but you got to do it often, right? Every day if you can, even if it's like 15 minutes, just keep doing it, because you'll find ideas come to you, that the creativity will come, and that the writing will get better. And that's the best thing I can say.
That's fantastic advice. It really is. All right, folks. My goodness. Published author, author of Camera Ready, Princess Smile, for Position Only. The soon to be released Deadly Sins, which for some reason I don't know, stuck on. I can't wait to see that come out. Collection of short stories. Also, her mystery thriller novel, Summer's Blood, and the one that just came out that you have to go check out because she wrote it in the third person. So it's different and it's new and it's exciting. Go check out Slipper Girl. And they can all be found at her website, AdeleRoyce.com. Folks, Adele Royce, thank you so much, Adele, for being here, for sharing everything you did, and just for doing what you're doing. You're setting a standard for other people to follow, and I think it's amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Rory. This has been a delight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Folks, this has been another just incredible episode of the Right Path podcast, where truth still matters and words still have power. This is the place for authors who know that every single page is a step forward towards finding the right path. Until next time.